For triangle pose, one of the most important things is that the center of the kneecap points more or less toward the center line of the foot. If the knee turns in, when you try to turn your hips to the left, if this knee turns in, it puts a stretch, a stress on the medial ligament of the knee. And 80% of your knee problems tend to come from overstretch along the inside of the knee. So even if it slightly distorts the position of the foot, you want the center of the kneecap pointing directly forward. And with beginners, because you need a little safety factor, you might want to turn the knee even farther out. Now notice, if my hips turn to the right, if I bring that back hip forward, then this knee turns out a little more easily. So turning the hips too far to the left always tends to put a stress on the knee if you go too far. So if I come into this position and I'm just leaning on the wall, you can get the understanding that if my chest is turning up and my pelvis is turning down, provided that my knee is pointing directly toward the foot, okay, or to help knee to point directly toward the foot, as I'm in this position, how do I get a twist? Well, when I squeeze out a wash rag, what do? I grab it. One hand goes in one direction, the other in the other. So to get a twist, the hips tend to go down and the shoulders up. Now I could take this and turn it into any position. As I become more flexible, then the plane of the pelvis falls more in line with the plane of the hips, and the knee is still in the proper position. But in the beginning, pelvis turns down sharply, rib cage turns up toward the ceiling, and then if I lift my supporting arm, I feel tremendous inner abdominal pressure. And what it does is it supports lengthening of the lower spine. Another point is that as we're in this type of position, what do I do with my front hip? Well, if my front hip, as I'm in this position, if my front hip reaches back, so right hip reaching away from right heel, right rib cage floating out toward the foot, now I've lengthened the spine on that right side, on that lower side. And the leg can express greater strength. It's protected against overstretch. You want to be high enough so that you're not feeling a stretch in the back of the leg, or something mild that body can let go into. If I feel too much stretch in a muscle, you get concerned about that. A few things that can be done. One could be to bend the knee. The other could be to stamp the foot into the floor so you feel the back of your leg turn on. If a muscle is going to tear, it'll always tear as it's feeling a stronger and stronger stretch. So if in a given pose, I can contract the muscle and stop the feeling of stretch, then the muscle is probably safe. But if I feel a stretch and I cannot contract the muscle and stop it, it's too far. You've gone too deeply into the pose and you have to alter the pose or come out. So then triangle becomes a process of turning the chest toward the ceiling. Head turning up is not absolutely necessary. If you have any neck problems, you look straight down. As I'm in this position, chest is turning up, pelvis turning down. Right side of the waist lengthening. The way you do that, right hip back, right rib cage forward, and then lift that right arm up, right hip away from right heel, and you can see how right side of my spine might begin to lengthen. Chest turning toward the ceiling, pelvis down, lifting the arm. And everything will stretch out evenly. Length of or a line through the spine is even. I'm not compressing on one side, overstretching on the other. I try to keep a neutral spine along the front line. And that's triangle.